Hey everyone. I just wanted to get on here. I've got some things I want to talk about today. Um, I've noticed that there's a lot of stuff people very close to me are dealing with, and it's something that I personally just kind of came out of. Um, and it's about battling fear. If there's one thing that the enemy uses against us, it's fear. And he knows us well enough to know what to use to to build that fear in us. Um, the reason that the enemy uses fear is because if you're in the spirit, then fear doesn't exist. God did not mean for you to be afraid. He meant for you to um, be strong and courageous. He says that over and over and over in the Bible. And the enemy uses fear to knock you off. And the thing about fear is it's so deep seated in us in so many different things that it's hard to recognize that we are falling into fear. And sometimes we may not even recognize it as fear. There's, fear of losing a job, relationships with family, friends, the relationship, or the fear of failing people, not being able to meet everyone's expectations, not being able to do everything that everyone wants us to do or succeed in those things, feel like we're failing people all the time. There's a fear in failing people, a fear to be able to say no to things because we're afraid we're going to hurt or upset somebody or offend somebody. Fear in marriages, fear in relationships. There's fear in almost everything we do, and the enemy knows how to create. He's put a lot of things and systems into place to help feed our fears, our self-esteem, fear of rejection. The enemy knows how to play on every single thing that will build up fear in our lives. And the thing is once we are dealing and we are battling in extreme fear, we take our eyes off of God. We are no longer in his spirit, and it takes us away from God, and he knows that, but it can be so subtly that we don't even realize it's happening. Until we're too far into it, we don't see a way out. All we can see is the pit around us. We don't see how we got there, and then we can't see how to get out. There's fear in losing your children, fear of them being sick, fear of people dying. There's a lot of different fears that we're going to face in this world, and the enemy knows how to use specific things to keep that fear built up in you. But see, God also knows how to use those things to overcome so that you can have more faith in him than you had before. It feels like you're surrounded by darkness. It feels like there's just no way out. But if you keep your faith and you keep believing and you keep turning it over to God and give him a chance to turn it into something good, then he has proven himself once again to you. So you need to start recognizing the fear that you're dealing with in your life. Is it a fear of an illness? Is it a fear of not doing well at work or at school? That's where our kids deal with depression, because they're constantly afraid of failing their parents or not being good enough or upsetting them. It's amazing how we can stress our children out by expecting too much of them and putting too much pressure on them. But they don't want to fail us. They want to succeed. They want us to be proud of them, and then they're afraid that we're not going to be. So that's why a lot of kids wind up in depression. So I wanted to touch on that. We need to start recognizing the fear that the enemy is placing around us. We need to and we need to recognize it in our friends, and we need to call it out as it is. We need to let them know, I love you, but I see that this is what's going on, and I see how it is taking you farther away from God, and we've got to get this dealt with. because it comes in so slow and so subtle that you don't even realize it's overtaking you until you're sitting there completely consumed by the situation. So let's advocate for each other. Let's recognize these things. Let's bring these things to light. Start recognizing them in ourselves. Find out what your fears are, your greatest fears are. Find out how the enemy can be playing on them. Know your enemy, know his tactics, and know that the things that are in your head, the fear of your looks, the fear of how people think about you. There's a fear of the people that misconceive something. And because when you respect people, when you have people that you respect and you look up to, and they misconceive something, it's heartbreaking because you're afraid of them thinking those things about you. But the truth is that they're going to hear what they want to hear, and there's nothing that you can do about it, and there's no way you can change it. You can tell them what it is they're going to take and hear what they want to hear out of it, and you can't. You can't do anything about that. And we have to learn to let these things go. We have to learn to overcome these barriers and these fears and understand, okay, people are going to leave our lives. Instead of being afraid of those people leaving our lives, we have to understand that there's a reason behind it. For everything, God can do good. Everything that we think is bad, God can do good. But the enemy will use those fears to keep us from being in the Spirit and take us further away from God. So that's one thing. We need to recognize that. We need to recognize it in ourselves. We need to recognize it in our friends. And we need to overcome those things. All right, second thing that I wanted to talk about is one of the greatest fears that we deal with is something that I'm involved in. A lot of you may know, and some of you may not. I know some people don't approve of it, but this is something that was laid on our heart and a battle that we are going to fight because families are important, and the enemy will use breaking up a family and tearing down the people involved in that situation in order to get to them, and he uses fear to do a lot of that. The family court systems, the policies and legislatures that are put in place are meant to help tear families apart. It gives incentives for families to be ripped apart. And I know a lot of people don't feel that we should be, as people of ministry, that we shouldn't be advocating for this and we shouldn't have a hand in it. But the truth is, the enemy is using the tearing up of families and the separating of children and parents from their families to be able to bring in doubt and fear and self-esteem issues, depression. The enemy uses these things so that he can pick us off, but one by one. I get that a lot of couples aren't going to be able to get along if they separate or divorce, and that's understandable. But we've always got to do what's best for the children. So share parenting when there's two willing and able parents. Being able to let your children be happy, loving the other parent at equal time, letting them enjoy a step parent, letting them be kids and having love, as much love as possible. Another thing that brings in fear, especially when you're going through these battles, is the CPS system, Child Protective Services, and they can create a huge amount of fear. I know this. Them being involved, because you hear horror stories of how something simple, some misunderstanding can wind up with children lost in the foster care system for a very long time, and that is a very scary thing. So I know that a lot of people don't really think that I should be doing this or that we should be doing this or be a part of these movements and that we should speak out for these things, but I'm going to battle the enemy on this, and I'm sorry if that offends people. This is what we've been asked to do. This is what we've been called to do. We have been through it ourselves. We can support those that have been through it. We have a lot of legal knowledge where we can help people. But the biggest thing is getting people to realize the problem and how it's being systematically done and incentives are being put out there to break families apart and tear children away from their one of their parents, and devastating their lives and their futures, which, makes it difficult for them to ever know God. It gives the enemy room to work in their lives, in all of the parties involved. So, this is something that's laid on our hearts, because it's important to fight for families. It's important to stop the things that give incentives to breaking families apart, and we need to start giving incentives on keeping families together. And even if not in marriage, in the children being secure within both homes. We've got to start changing how those things are done. And so, I've had a lot of people put on my friends list in the last few days. I don't know what's going on. I've had a huge uptake in friends requests because of these different movements. And so there's something big coming here. I want to give a shout out to Christopher Rainbolt for everything that he's been doing. It's been amazing to see the work that he's doing, and I'm going to continue to praise him and be whatever he needs us to be when he needs us there. So proud of everything that he's doing, and we're going to continue to be by his side and work with that. So, again, I'm sorry some of you don't think that we should be outspoken about it, but I'm not going to keep quiet about what the enemy's doing. I'm going to bring to light what he's doing. Something else that I really want to speak on is I've been given a good opportunity by a dear friend. I've spoke out about CBD oil. Matt and I've used it for a while now. I was finally feeling halfway myself again. But a dear friend that I've known since elementary school has introduced me to something that is making really great strides in my body and in my life. And it's not something I even have to ingest. So that's been awesome. And I'm overcoming a fear of failure by becoming a part of this. I've had a lot of things thrown at me before, and it's, never felt right. But I've prayed on this a lot, and God has told me that I need to do this. Now I've got to get over that last step of fear. There's a lot of good things just in the short amount of time that I've already had this. As far as body and health wise, mentally, energy, weight, skin, hair. I mean, there's a lot of changes already going on in my body that are extremely positive. So this is something that I feel are going to benefit, and it's not to benefit my family. It's to benefit people. The things that it's doing, the lack of pain that I've been dealing with, it's really been awesome. So I will speak more on that later. Just keep tuned, pay attention, and I will, once I get everything in order, I will start talking to you guys about that more. But I just wanted to let you know that I'm doing that as well. So if you guys have any questions, if you guys have anything, I've got my blog. So if you have anything that you want me to talk about, I can write it to put it in there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But I just wanted to throw some things out there. I see a lot of what the enemy is doing here. I see a lot of people being broke down by fear, and I'm ready to stand against it. I'm ready to fight this. I love you guys too much to let the enemy be using this against us continually. And now that I've been able to come out of that, and I didn't do it gracefully. No, I didn't, but that's okay. I failed. I broke some, but God is healing that and fixing that and growing me even further in that. So I'm not going to sit back and think about, how far I fell or how broken I wound up. And anybody else that wants to, you can stay there and live in that time if you want to, or you can rejoice with us. Either way. So just wanted to tell you guys I love and appreciate every single one of you that's listened, who's been a part of a part of us going through these things that we've been through. And I'm asking you to pray as we move into this new adventure in our life that it's going to be something great, not just as far as financially. I really have a good feeling about that, but I also how it's going to affect and help other people. That is what this is about. So if you guys have any feedback, let me know, and I really appreciate and love you guys. God bless.